All right, so you're creating amazing content, right? And I bet you really want to make sure it's not just fading into the background of the internet.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into it. In this deep dive, we're going to break down how to totally master SEO content optimization for 2025.
Right.
We've pulled some really insightful stuff from the Benny Mathur Show to equip you with the essential steps and tools you need,
Okay.
and to really help you get a handle on how things are changing in the SEO world.
Mm-hmm.
So what's our goal here? It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty simple. We want to help you make sure all your hard work gets seen by the right people.
Yeah, that's the whole point, right?
Exactly. Now, Benny Mathur kicks things off by talking about keywords,
Yeah.
which is no surprise, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he really stresses doing it the smart way.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting how much search engine algorithms have evolved over the years.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the old days of just cramming your text full of keywords.
Yeah,
That's just not going to cut it in 2025.
right.
In fact, it can actually hurt you now. What Benny's really highlighting is the importance of integrating keywords naturally.
So it's not just about having them.
Right.
It's about where they are
Exactly.
and how well they fit into your content.
You got it.
So he talks about weaving them into your headings, like your H1s, H2s, all those things that guide the reader,
Makes sense.
and then naturally into your body text.
Yeah.
But he even mentions like alt text for images, which I thought was interesting.
Well, that's all part of it.
You really have to think about the human reader first and foremost.
Oh, absolutely. If your content sounds forced or awkward because you're trying too hard to stuff keywords in,
Yeah,
people are going to leave.
right.
And that sends a really bad signal to search engines.
Makes sense.
But Benny also brings up this really interesting concept of semantic keywords.
Okay, so this is where it gets a bit more complex, right?
Right.
We're not just talking about the exact phrases we initially think of.
No, it's more about this whole web of related ideas.
It's like a whole constellation of related terms.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
So we're talking synonyms, related concepts, different
Yeah.
ways people might search for the same information.
Exactly. You know, there used to be this term LSI, or latent semantic indexing.
Yeah.
But really, it all boils down to enriching your content with terms that add context.
Right.
Because by including these related terms, you're sending a signal to search engines that you really understand the topic.
You're an authority.
Yeah, you're building topical authority.
I like that.
Benny even mentions LSE graph
Okay.
as a tool that can help you uncover these connections.
Wow. So it's all about showing you've done your homework.
Exactly.
Okay. So if we're writing about, let's say, the best running shoes,
Okay.
we might also want to include things like footwear for marathon training or cushioned running sneakers.
Right.
You could even talk about common running injuries and what shoes help prevent them.
That's a good one, yeah.
It makes sense because people explore topics from all these different angles.
They do.
Now, what about keyword density? Remember when everyone was obsessed with that magic percentage?
Oh,
Oh, I got to hit this number.
Benny's really good about steering clear of that.
Yeah.
Because that kind of rigid thinking can lead to some pretty unnatural writing.
Oh, totally.
The focus should always be on creating content that's truly valuable and in-depth.
Right.
If you're really diving deep into a topic, the right keywords are going to be there naturally.
They'll just flow out.
Right. Trying to force a certain density can actually hurt the user experience.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what search engines care about the most.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to something we see all the time in search results.
Yeah.
Titles and meta descriptions.
Oh, yeah.
They're kind of like your content's first impression.
They're your handshake with the reader.
Exactly. You could have the most amazing content hidden away on page 1.
Right.
But if that title and meta description aren't catchy,
Yeah.
people are just going to scroll right past it.
Totally. And what's really interesting is that balancing act. You absolutely need those target keywords so search engines know what the page is about.
Right.
But you also need compelling language.
To hook them.
Yeah, you need to make people want to click.
Benny talks about using strong verbs, maybe posing a question, even creating a little mystery.
Yeah, like a little cliffhanger.
Yeah. Think about what makes you click when you're looking at search results.
That's a great way to think about it.
And then the meta description needs to build on that, right?
Absolutely.
It's your chance to explain why your content is worth reading.
It's the value proposition.
Exactly. What's in it for the reader?
Yeah. And Benny's really big on keeping it concise
Okay.
within those character limits, like 150 to 160 characters.
Right. So the whole message shows up in that search snippet.
Exactly. And he mentions how helpful the Yoast SEO plugin is.
Okay.
It has this snippet preview that lets you actually see how your title and description will look,
Oh, wow.
which is so helpful.
It takes out the guesswork.
It does. You need that visual aspect.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so We've got people intrigued enough to click. Now, how do we keep them engaged once they're on the page?
Well, that's where good content structure comes in.
Right, because it's not just about making things look
Yeah.
pretty.
No, it's not about aesthetics.
It affects the user experience.
But it affects how search engines understand your content.
So it's like building a good, solid framework for your ideas.
Exactly.
And Betty really emphasizes the importance of using header tags,
Yeah,
like your H1s, H2s, and so on.
right.
What's the key principle there?
It's all about the hierarchy.
Okay.
Your H1 tag is your main title, the big overarching topic. And of course, it should include your primary keyword.
Naturally.
Then you use those other heading tags to organize your content,
Right.
to break it down into clear sections.
Okay.
This not only makes complex information easier for readers to digest,
Yeah.
but it also tells search engines which parts of your content are the most important.
So you're giving them a roadmap.
Basically, and you're often incorporating those secondary keywords in your H2s and H3s too.
Oh, that's smart.
Right.
And it's not just those formal headings, is it?
No, it's not.
He also mentions using things like short paragraphs and bullet points.
Absolutely. These days, people are scanning content all the time on their phones and on the go.
Right. They don't have time to read these huge walls of text.
Exactly. Short paragraphs and bullet points make your information much more scannable.
And so much easier to understand.
Much easier to digest.
Yeah. And that leads to better readability, keeps people engaged.
And ultimately contributes to good SEO.
Okay, so now let's talk about internal and external links, the connections that make the web work.
Oh yeah, links are essential.
They really are. So why are these so important for content optimization?
Well, internal linking is all about creating a network within your own website.
Okay.
It helps spread what's called link equity, which is basically the value that one page passes to another.
So it's like sharing the love.
It also makes it easier for search engines to find and index all your content.
Oh, I see.
And it makes things so much easier for your visitors to navigate.
Right, they can explore more.
Exactly. Now, external linking is about pointing to trustworthy sources outside your own website.
Okay.
This adds credibility to your content
Right.
and gives your readers extra value if they want to learn more.
It's like saying, hey, we did our research and here's where you can find even more information.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about visuals now.
Visuals.
Images and multimedia are more than just decoration.
Right. They're not just there to make things pretty.
They actually play a role in SEO too.
They do. They can really enhance user engagement and send some valuable SEO signals.
Interesting.
And it all starts with something as basic as the file name.
Okay.
Benny points out that instead of using generic names like image01.jpg,
Which we've all done.
you should use descriptive file names that include relevant keywords.
Oh, that makes sense.
So if it's an image of running shoes,
Okay. You might use something like best marathon running shoes-review.jpg.
right, so much more informative.
Much more informative.
And it gives the image context right away.
Exactly.
And then there's alt text,
Right.
which I know is crucial for accessibility.
It is.
But how does that tie into SEO?
Well, alt text does that important job of describing the image for screen readers.
Right.
But it also helps search engines understand what the image is about.
Okay.
So you always want to write alt text that's descriptive and uses relevant keywords.
Be specific.
Be specific, yeah.
And don't forget about page loading speed.
Oh, yeah.
Because those big, unoptimized images can really slow things down.
They can't. Page speed is a really big ranking factor,
It is.
and large image files are a huge culprit.
So what can we do about that?
Well, Benny mentions tools like TinyPNG or Image Optim.
Okay.
These tools can compress your images, which reduces their file size.
Without making them look bad, right?
Right, without any noticeable loss in quality.
And what about video and audio content? Well, optimizing those doesn't stop at just embedding them on your page.
So there's more to it than just hitting play.
Exactly. For video and audio, providing transcripts is so important.
Okay, why is that?
It makes your content accessible to a wider audience.
Right.
And it gives search engines a text version they can understand.
That's smart.
You should also optimize the titles and descriptions of your videos
Okay.
on platforms like YouTube using relevant keywords, just like you would for a web page.
Okay, so we've covered the steps for optimizing the content itself.
Yeah.
But Benny also talks about some key tools that can really help us out.
Yeah. Tools are essential.
What are the must-haves in our SEO toolkit for 2025?
Well, Benny mentions a bunch of really great ones.
Oh.
For anyone using WordPress Yoast, SEO is pretty much essential.
Yeah, I love that plugin.
It walks you through optimizing your titles, meta descriptions, readability, and it points out potential SEO issues.
It's like having a little SEO expert built right into your website. Okay, but what about when you want to really understand what's working for the top-ranking content?
That's where tools like Surfer SEO, Market Muse, and ClearScope come in.
Okay, I've heard of those.
These are really powerful platforms,
Yeah.
often AI-driven,
Oh,
that analyze the top performing content for your target keywords.
so they're doing all the research for you?
They give you insights into things like the ideal word count, how your competitors are using keywords,
Yeah.
even suggest related topics you might want to cover
To make your content even better?
to make it more comprehensive and authoritative. Exactly.
Market Muse is really good at that.
Yeah, Market Muse excels at identifying content gaps and building topical authority.
And what about ClearScope?
ClearScope offers similar recommendations, but it's really focused on optimizing your content based on what's already ranking well.
So they're giving you a data-driven blueprint for creating top-notch content.
Basically.
And of course, we can't forget about the tools from Google.
Google's always got something right.
They do Google Search Console and Google Page Speed Insights.
Yeah, those are essential.
What do those bring to the table?
Well, Google Search Console is like your direct line to Google.
Okay,
It tells you how your website is performing in search results.
got it.
You can see what keywords are bringing in traffic,
Uh-huh.
identify any technical problems that might be holding you back.
Yeah.
You can even submit your sitemap to make sure Google knows about all your pages.
It's like a health checkup for your website.
It's crucial for monitoring your SEO.
And what about Page Speed Insights?
Well, as the name suggests, it analyzes how fast your pages load
Okay.
on both desktop and mobile,
Right.
and it gives you specific advice on how to improve things.
That's helpful.
Yeah, especially since page speed affects your ranking and the user experience.
Makes sense. So you should be using that tool regularly.
Regularly.
All right, so we've got a good understanding of the how-to and the what-with.
But do.
But let's step back and look at the bigger picture for a minute. What are the big changes happening in the SEO world in 2025 that we really need to know about?
Well, Benny highlights some really important trends.
Okay.
Probably the biggest one is that search engine algorithms are constantly being refined.
Especially Google's.
Especially
It's
Google.
always tweaking things.
They are, and the overall direction is a focus on high-quality content that puts the user first.
Right. Content that's actually helpful and valuable.
Exactly, and something that's become particularly important in 2025 is EEAT.
EET, so that's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness.
You got it.
We're all familiar with EAT.
Right.
But that first E for experience is a relatively new emphasis.
It is. It shows that search engines are recognizing the value of firsthand experience.
So if you're writing a product review,
Yeah,
it helps if you've actually used the product.
absolutely. Demonstrating your experience, establishing yourself as an expert in your field.
Building authority.
Building authority, fostering trust with your audience.
All of these are becoming even more vital for good rankings. They are.
You know, you could even think about incorporating personal anecdotes
Yeah.
or case studies
That's a good one.
to add that extra layer of credibility.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Search engines want to give people reliable information,
of course.
and lived experience just adds to that reliability.
Now, what about voice search?
Oh, voice search.
It's everywhere these days.
It is. How do you think that's affecting content strategy?
Well, as voice assistants become more integrated into our lives,
Right.
optimizing for natural language queries is becoming crucial.
Yeah, because people talk differently than they type.
Exactly.
Voice searches are often longer,
More conversational.
more conversational, and phrased as questions.
So your content needs to anticipate these natural language patterns.
It does.
You could structure your content to directly answer common questions.
That's a great strategy.
So instead of just targeting a keyword like coffee maker reviews,
Yeah.
we might also think about longer phrases like, what's the best coffee maker for someone who only drinks 1 cup a day? Exactly. And this often leads to creating content that solves very specific problems.
Content that's super targeted.
Super targeted, yeah.
Benny also mentions mobile-first indexing,
Right.
which has been the standard for a while now,
It has.
but it's clearly still super important.
Oh, absolutely. Google mainly looks at the mobile version of your website.
Oh, okay.
So if your site isn't optimized for mobile,
Yeah.
if it loads slowly, isn't responsive, or just looks bad on smaller screens,
Right.
you're going to have a tough time in the search results.
And another interesting point Benny brings up is personalized search results.
Personalized search.
How does that change how we approach content creation?
Well, the basic SEO principles are still important,
Okay.
but the fact that search results are tailored to each person.
Right, based on their search history, location, all that stuff.
Exactly. That means it's more important than ever to understand your target audience.
and what they want.
Yeah, you need to know their specific intent.
So you can create content that meets their unique needs.
Yeah.
It's about going beyond those broad generalizations
It is.
and really focusing on the needs of different groups within your audience.
That's the key.
And finally, Benny talks about how AI is being used to analyze content.
Oh, yeah.
So search engines are getting even better at figuring out what's truly high quality
They are.
and filtering out all the fluff.
Exactly.
This really reinforces the idea that creating valuable content
Yes.
that answers your audience's questions.
Right.
That's the best long-term SEO strategy.
You just trying to trick the system with outdated tactics is just going to become less and less effective.
Because the AI is getting smarter.
The AI is getting smarter.
Okay, so the big takeaway here is that SEO content optimization in 2025.
Yeah.
It's not just about checking off a list of things.
No, it's not.
It's about finding that balance between creating content people love
Right.
and making sure search engines can understand its value.
It's a dynamic interplay.
It is. It's not either.
The best approach is to create user-centric content with a strong understanding of SEO.
And it sounds like continuous learning is key here.
Oh, it is. The landscape is constantly changing.
So you have to stay informed.
Stay informed about algorithm updates, be willing to try new tools,
Right.
and always keep the user experience in mind.
Because ultimately, it's all about the people consuming your content.
It is.
So here's a final thought for you.
Okay.
Thinking about this whole personalization of search,
Yeah.
how can you tailor your content strategy to connect with even more specific audience needs? What micro-communities or niche interests could you tap into?
That's a great question.
That's something to really think about as you move forward with your content.
Yeah. It's all about finding your people.
It is. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.